Color TV game. Nintendo's first home console wasn't the NES, it was the Color TV game, released exclusively in Japan in 1977. Unlike later consoles, it didn't use game cartridges. Instead, each version came with its games built directly into the hardware, with most offering different variations of Pong. Over the next few years, Nintendo released several models, including racing and block-breaking versions, each with its own built-in games. While simple by today's standards, the Color TV game sold well in Japan and gave Nintendo valuable experience designing gaming hardware. It may not be as well known as the company's later consoles, but it laid the foundation for Nintendo's future in the video game industry. Nintendo Entertainment System. After the video game crash of 1983, many people believed the home console market was finished. Nintendo helped change that with the Nintendo Entertainment System, better known as the NES. The console first launched in Japan as the Family Computer, or Famicom, before being redesigned for North America in 1985 with a gray front-loading design that looked more like a VCR than a toy. That helped retailers and consumers take it more seriously. More importantly, the NES introduced players to legendary games like Super Mario Bros., The Legend of Zelda, Metroid, and Punch-Out! The system didn't just become a huge success for Nintendo, it helped revive the home console industry and established many of the franchises that are still popular today. New Style NES. Nearly a decade after the NES first launched, Nintendo released a redesigned version known as the New Style NES, or Top Loader. Instead of loading cartridges through the front, games were inserted directly into the top of the console. The simpler design solved many of the cartridge connection issues that had become common with the original model, making it much more reliable. It was also smaller and easier to manufacture, although a few features from the original console were removed. Arriving late in the NES's life, the top loader became the final version of one of gaming's most influential consoles. Super Nintendo Entertainment System. Nintendo followed the NES with the Super Nintendo Entertainment System in 1991, bringing players into the 16-bit era. Compared to its predecessor, the SNES delivered better graphics, richer sound, and much larger, more detailed games. It also introduced shoulder buttons on its controller, a feature that would eventually become standard across the industry. During this generation, Nintendo found itself competing directly with Sega, leading to one of gaming's biggest rivalries. Classics like Super Mario World, The Legend of Zelda, A Link to the Past, Super Metroid, and Donkey Kong Country helped build one of the strongest game libraries ever released, and many players still consider the SNES Nintendo's greatest console. New Style Super NES. As the Nintendo 64 approached, Nintendo gave the Super Nintendo one final redesign. Released in 1997, the New Style Super NES featured a smaller, more compact design while remaining fully compatible with the existing game library. Most of the changes were cosmetic, but the updated hardware was less expensive to produce and easier to fit into modern entertainment centers. Although it arrived near the end of the SNES's lifespan, it gave new players one last chance to experience one of Nintendo's most celebrated consoles. Nintendo GameCube. When the GameCube launched in 2001, Nintendo took a very different approach from its competitors. Instead of chasing flashy looks, it released a small, cube-shaped console complete with a built-in carrying handle, making it one of the most recognizable systems ever made. It also marked Nintendo's move away from cartridges in favor of miniature optical discs, giving developers more room for larger games. Although it couldn't keep up with the PlayStation 2 in sales, the GameCube built an incredible library that included Super Smash Bros. Melee, Metroid Prime, Pikmin, Mario Kart Double Dash, and The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker. Over the years, what was once considered an underdog has become one of Nintendo's most beloved consoles. Wii. Nintendo surprised the entire gaming industry when it released the Wii in 2006. While Sony and Microsoft focused on making more powerful hardware, Nintendo took a completely different path by building a console around motion controls. The Wii Remote encouraged players to swing, point, and move naturally, making games accessible to people who had never played before. Wii Sports quickly became a worldwide phenomenon, introducing millions of families to gaming. The console found its way into living rooms, retirement homes, schools, and even hospitals, reaching audiences far beyond traditional gamers. By focusing on fun instead of raw performance, the Wii became one of the best-selling home consoles of all time. Wii Family Edition. Several years into the Wii's lifespan, Nintendo introduced the Wii Family Edition. At first glance, it looked almost identical to the original console, but there were a few important differences. The system was designed to sit horizontally instead of vertically and removed support for Nintendo GameCube games and accessories. Since most buyers were now focused entirely on Wii games, Nintendo simplified the hardware and reduced manufacturing costs. For new players, very little changed, but longtime fans immediately noticed the missing backward compatibility. Wii Mini. Released near the end of the Wii's life, the Wii Mini was designed as a lower-cost version of the console. Its red and black design stood out from every previous Wii model, but the lower price came with several compromises. Nintendo removed internet connectivity, the SD card slot, and GameCube compatibility, leaving players with a system focused almost entirely on physical Wii games. It wasn't the most feature-rich version of the console, but it gave budget-conscious players one final way to experience Nintendo's massive Wii library. Wii U. The Wii U arrived in 2012 with one of Nintendo's most unique ideas yet. Its standout feature was the gamepad, a controller with a built-in touchscreen that allowed players to interact with games in new ways or even continue playing without using the television. While the concept was creative, many people misunderstood what the Wii U actually was, with some believing it was simply an accessory for the original Wii. That confusion, combined with limited third-party support, led to disappointing sales. Even so, the Wii U introduced several ideas that would later influence the Nintendo Switch, and many of its best games eventually found a much larger audience on newer hardware. Nintendo Switch. Nintendo completely changed direction again with the Nintendo Switch in 2017. Instead of making separate home consoles and handhelds, the company combined both ideas into a single hybrid system. Players could dock it to a television at home, then pick it up and continue playing on the go just moments later. That flexibility quickly became one of the console's biggest strengths. Launching alongside The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild gave the Switch an unforgettable start, and hit after hit kept its momentum going for years. With games like Animal Crossing New Horizons, Super Mario Odyssey, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, and Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, the Switch became one of Nintendo's greatest success stories. Nintendo Switch OLED model. 4 years after the original Switch launched, Nintendo released its first major hardware revision. The Switch OLED model featured a larger 7-inch OLED display with richer colors and deeper blacks, making handheld games look noticeably better. It also added improved speakers, a much sturdier kickstand, and twice the internal storage. While the internal performance stayed the same, the overall experience felt more polished, especially for players who spent most of their time gaming in handheld mode. Nintendo Switch 2. After years of speculation, Nintendo officially introduced the Switch 2 as the successor to one of its most successful consoles ever. Rather than abandoning the hybrid concept, Nintendo chose to improve it with more powerful hardware, a larger display, redesigned Joy-Con controllers, and support for more demanding games. The company also maintained compatibility with many original Switch titles, allowing players to bring much of their existing library into the new generation. Instead of reinventing the formula, the Switch 2 builds on everything that made the original so popular, continuing Nintendo's long history of finding new ways to play while staying true to what works.